velocity of change right now in banking is extreme. Technology is coming whether you want it or not. If you just look at some of our statistics, say as recently as 2 years ago, 38% of our deposits were done on a mobile app. Today it's going 54%. When we look at security and cybercrime, etc., the investments we're making are both at the level of protecting your data as well as protecting how you do transactions. We also do a lot of financial literacy workshops about protecting your data on cybercrime. It's just really embracing technology in different ways to deliver for our customers in a safe environment, but in a quicker way.
The world of work is made up of architecture, it's made up of furniture, and it's made up of technology. And today, technology finds its way into every aspect of how we do our business. In the old days, we might have a drawing or even a rendering of what the space might look like to help the client try to imagine working in their new environment. Today, we can use virtual reality tools. So the client then can actually see the space in 3D. They can turn physically from left to right and understand the relationships between the furniture and the architecture. Or they can actually move forward, walking forward in the space. We're continuing to make investments in how people experience this. We're constantly trying things, improving on things, and when we think we've got it solved, we start at the beginning again. That's the only way to really keep pace with the level of change that's needed to compete in the future.
You know, what really makes Dow unique is we combine the power of science and technology to innovate what is essential to human progress. And if you think about some of the value chains that we participate in, packaging materials, for example, where we reduced waste from farm to table, or in the buildings in which we live and work, improving the energy efficiency, or in the cars that we drive, improving the fuel efficiency to be able to go farther on a tank of gas. These are the kinds of things that makes Dow unique. It's really improving the lives of each and every one of us. One of the best ways we're working on staying connected with our customers is we just finished about a year ago a massive uplift, frankly one of the world's largest and most complicated uplifts to one instance of SAP globally around the Dow world, so we can ultimately be more effective with our customers.
Please welcome panelist Rick DeVore, Executive Vice President and Regional President, Detroit and Southeast Michigan, PNC Financial Services Group. Jim Keene, President and Chief Executive Officer, Steelcase. And Howard Ungerleider, Vice Chairman and Chief Financial Officer, the Dow Chemical Company. And our moderator, Christy McDonald. Anchor, My Week.
Good morning. It is great to see everyone here this morning. You know, earlier today, Patrick Doyle gave us some concrete examples about how new high-tech solutions are redefining how organizations can deliver their services and grow their market share. I mean, people ordering pizza from Facebook Messenger, life changer. And it's not the Facebook that I keep telling my mother, no, Mom, you can't order pizza from the Facebook. Facebook Messenger. We're still working on that one. You know, I'm excited about moderating this panel here this morning because we're going to take a look at how rapid changes in technology are disrupting businesses across the spectrum and the opportunities that are really coming out of these new advancements. And how does a company stay ahead? How do you identify the next big thing? We're going to be tackling all of that here this morning with our panel of gentlemen. So we're going to start off, and we have three very different perspectives, I think, here this morning, but I'm going to start off with the same question for each of you. And Rick, I'm going to start down with you. So taking a look back at the last 10 years, how has technology drastically changed how you do business at PNC?
I think the pace of change is just monumental. I would say, just looking back 4 years ago, we probably received about 38% of our deposits either through your phone or through the ATM. Today it's over 60%, and it really shows no signs of slowing down. So I mean, just in 4 years, the pace of change has accelerated enormously. And really it affects how we go to market and how we do business, because we have a conundrum. Our conundrum is told, really think about it, our CEO talks about his mother and his daughter. How do we bridge taking care of the senior experience at a branch and the daughter who's never going to set foot in one? And how do you adapt to that evolving model? And it's different in every market, right? I mean, the demographics in Pittsburgh are much different than they are in Detroit, much different maybe than Chicago. So it's a process. It requires new employees, a new view. You know, I walked in, I had a meeting in Pittsburgh back in May, and I had some extra time. And they said, hey, you can use the executive floor and use the vice chairman's office. I went up there and we were doing a hackathon. And they were allowing the hackers to actually occupy the offices of the senior management. I can tell you 5 years ago, I never thought I'd see that.
Right.
But I mean, that gives you an idea of just a whole different vibe, a different feel to banking.
Jim, what about you? Go ahead and give us from your perspective how things have changed.
Well, in addition to the way we run our company, which technology, of course, affects every part of that, the most fundamental part for us is that the people we serve, the users who sit in our furniture at work every day, are affected by changes in technology in their life. And that's always been the case. So, many people think about the cubicle. The cubicle really showed up because the CRT showed up. So when people had CRTs that they used to access the mainframe in the basement and later on the personal computer, it needed a place to go, and the corner of a cubicle was a perfect place to put it. And so every cubicle was meant to be a place you sat facing the corner. As flat screen displays came along, that all started to change as computers became mobile, and as Wi-Fi showed up, mobility in the office became just a fundamental shift. So every time technology's changed in the world of work, it's also changed the best solutions around furniture. And so we stay very closely connected with technology because we know that's the best vector for us to understand what's likely to be needed next in the world of the products we create.
All right, Howard, I'm going to launch that question to you. How are things changed the way you've done business in the last 10 years or so?
How much time do we have?
Well, we've got about an hour, about, right?
No, relax. Don't get nervous. I mentioned in the early intro about a couple of years ago, Dow finalized about a 5-year journey, and we uplifted. It was the largest, most complex and global one instance of ERP. We used SAP, and that really has enabled us to break down a lot of our traditional functions. So you think about purchasing or supply chain or manufacturing or customer service, and the way we're thinking about our business today is really more end-to-end. So whether it's order to cash or forecast to fulfill or procure to pay. And so that's enabling us to utilize that technology to work with our customers. So our consumer care business, which is one of our larger businesses, and we're a materials provider to the world's largest consumer products companies, and it's allowed us to reduce our order touches by over 30% just in the last 12 months alone, and that's increased our efficiency, which hopefully translates to bottom line, but it's also improved our reliability as a supplier to our customers.
All right, so when we're talking about the advancement in technology, how, and this is again, I think for all three of you as well, how do you step back and say, all right, what is going to be the next big thing, and how many years out are you looking at certain things to make sure that you are not only present, but then be on the curve a little bit? Rick, let me start with you.
I think you have to think on traditionally. We have an innovation center in conjunction with Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh. We have a whole branch that we virtual branch, if you will, there. We do that. Quite frankly, I'm trying to do something like this in Ann Arbor at Maine and Huron, where we're basically going to provide space for what the Ann Arbor community is calling constructive collisions. Offer that space up to the tech community. We can, I think, be more relevant to the tech community. I mean, let's face it, I can't make loans out of the box to startups, or the regulators tell me to write them off. But how do you become relevant, and then how do you partner with these people? We have a number of partnerships in fintech. I think people say, are you afraid of fintech? Yeah, it's somewhat disintermediating the banking industry in the small sector, but there's a lot of lessons that we can learn from there. And I think if you go in our innovation centers, you're not going to see people that look like me. You're going to see people in there that look different, think different, and that's really what you need, I think, to stay pace.
So I'll add to this. So we're always scouting and scanning new technologies. We go to places like MIT's Media Lab where new technology is being developed. And I love this phrase that other people have coined before, that the future's already here. It's just not evenly distributed. So the future's out there somewhere. There's all kinds of really cool technologies out there. The hard question is figuring out which of those things is really going to be useful to people, real people. And that part is harder because they're not using it yet. So they don't really know what the problems are. They don't know what's delightful about it. And since you mentioned Carnegie Mellon, I'll tell a story about our experience there. A long time ago, when laptops first came out, you got to remember now, before the first laptop came out, you couldn't imagine what you would do with one of these things. Like maybe somebody who's a salesperson would use it, but most people would figure there's nothing I could really do with this. And Carnegie Mellon had done an experiment with their students. They gave their students laptops as sort of a standard issue. So every student had a laptop. And we thought it'd be interesting to discover changes in use patterns. Like what kinds of new problems or opportunities? How were these students actually using the laptops? Were they taking notes in the class, or what were they doing? So we sent researchers out to study that idea around how might this new technology help people who are students or teachers. And the researchers got to the classroom early. This classroom was a classic lecture classroom. You can picture it with the rows, the tiered seating going up like you can imagine. And our researchers got there early and watched people come into the room. As they did, they're just normally taking photographs. And when they looked at the photographs later on, they noticed something really interesting. The students came in and they sat in straight rows. Like the student in the first row was right in front of the student in the second row, the third row, and the fourth row. Straight lines going right up these tiers. And we're saying, why would they sit like that? Like, wouldn't you think that you would sit one over so you'd have a better view of the teacher? And we discovered the pattern, and we went back and asked the students, why are you sitting like this? Can anybody guess at the answer? It's power, right. Power, that's where the power plugs were, because that's where the cleaning crew had to come and plug the power in for the vacuum cleaners at night. And the students discovered that the scarce resource now, once you have a laptop, is power. Anybody who's ever been to an airport knows you see the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Right? So the way to be ahead sometimes with technology isn't the technology part, it's the human need part. How can you project yourself into that future place? How can you go to the places where people are already immersed in the new technology, and you find out how are humans different? How are they acting different because of that?
I think that's why, like, Rich Sheridan's work out at Menlo is so important. They're actually watching people use technology, not deciding how it's going to be used, but watching what they do with it.
Right.
More of an industrial engineering, process. But I think a lot can be learned from, that kind of process as well.
So Howard, how do you identify the next big thing and stay ahead of the curve?
Well, we do. We're doing some really exciting things with something that we call high throughput research, and we leverage it from the pharmaceutical industry. So, if you think about the way, we're chemistry, we're a material science company. You think about the way we used to do invention, 50, 30, 20 years ago, and it was really a bench chemist with a lab notebook, and all of his or her, and at that point it was mostly his secrets were in his lab notebook, and he would do maybe 100 to 1,000 experiments a year. And today we've got robotics on the front end, or on the front end of the capability, so we can do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, very small experiments. We can do now 2 million experiments a year with just one set of robotic capability, and that's bolted up to a back end of data analytics. And so everybody's lab notebooks are not in their notebooks now, it's in the cloud. I mean, it's a secure cloud, it's inside our company, and they can access that information before they even start to design the experiment. And so that's allowed us to be exceptionally more productive. I mean, one example is Under Armour. Most of you know Under Armour, leading athletic apparel manufacturer. They came to us, and we work really hard to innovate with customers, and you have to get a seat at the design table, and you have to earn that. And they came to us after we delivered a bunch of innovations and said, we need a lighter, more cushion sole. And so we went back, our marketers went back with our scientists. That would have taken us, and we realized we needed a new catalyst to be able to make that polymer. Trying to invent a new catalyst is typically a 1 to 3 year time frame using historic methods of invention. We were able to deliver a new catalyst in 3 weeks to be able to make that polymer to deliver the performance requirements that they needed to be able to allow them to win in their marketplace.
It's interesting, you said something about the information that's secure in the cloud. And that brings to me my next question for all of you. How important now is cybersecurity and everything that you're using the new technology to interface with your customers? And I would assume, Rick, cybersecurity is everything for you. Let me start with you.
It's everything. And, to me, the two big C's in banking right now are compliance and cyber, without a doubt. And if you think about it from a revenue standpoint, and Howard, you're a CFO, these are revenue protecting, not revenue producing situations. We look daily at about 1.8 billion records a day. The old days are different. If I'm sending information to Howard and Howard works at PNC Bank, and I have some customer records, it doesn't go to Howard. It actually goes to this infrastructure. It looks at the information, it decides, is that the right information? Do I have the right to look at this client? Does Howard have the right to receive that information? And this all happens, inside of maybe 15 seconds. But I think this is not going to go away. It's a huge issue. We're spending $100 billion as a company. We've built 2 redundant centers in Virginia that look like Langley, quite frankly. They're connected by dark fiber using retinal scanning. I mean, it looks right out of some sci-fi movie. But it's really important because if you think of our integrity, the worst thing from an operational risk we can have, if you look at the different risk buckets, credit, liquidity, market, it's operational, and it's really that data breach. If you look at destroying shareholder value, there you go. And so, we take this extremely seriously, but it's kind of table stakes. It's the lifeguard job, right? Nobody's telling you, hey, great day, nobody drowned. But it's table stakes. They expect it, and they should expect it, quite frankly. But, of that 1.8 billion records we look at, maybe we have 50 decent intrusions a day. When I hear our guys talk about it, they say we let it in, we find it, we neutralize it, and we put it out on the dark internet. I'm like, I don't even know what the dark internet is. That 19-year-old guy probably knows. But that apparently is where you put the scalps up at night to tell people what you've done. And of course, some of those people, work for us and should. So it's a different thing, but it's a real conundrum from a return on shareholder, return on equity, because again, this isn't producing revenue, but you got to do it. It's not going away.
I think Patrick Doyle's wondering if you can order a pizza on the dark internet right now.
Those
gonna-
guys
gonna
are eating
figure
your
that
pizza,
out.
I'm sure.
They're already working on it.
They're in the office working on it.
Jim, why don't you go ahead and add to
Well,
that?
As a global company, of course, we're attacked every day too. And one of the things you realize, you can't delegate this to some group of people down in the IT department. This is increasingly something that senior leaders have to be literate about. And we did an exercise. I'll do a shout out here to PwC. We had their team come in to Steelcase. They ran a simulation game for our senior team called Game of Threats. It was a great experience. We had to dedicate 3 hours for this. I mean, you have to sit back and go, that's a lot of time for the senior team. But we went through playing this game through scenario after scenario, both putting the senior leadership team in the shoes of somebody who would attack a company like ours, and then putting ourselves in the shoes of being on the defense against an attack, and thinking about all the implications of that. It's not just a technology situation, but it's also how do you reassure customers, how do you deal with the media, how do you think broadly about this problem, and how do you update your skills as a leader to build functional literacy around these topics, knowing what the dark threats are and knowing what the tools are. So I think investing in capabilities and realizing, again, it's not something you can delegate is an important consideration here.
Howard?
Yeah, I mean, cybersecurity is probably our single biggest threat when you think about all the intellectual property and trade secrets that I talked about that are in our internal cloud. We just inaugurated our latest envisioning of our cybersecurity center up in Midland, Michigan. I'd invite you, and you're welcome to join, but then I can never allow you to leave, so that might be a little bit of a problem. But we get hit with over 20,000 incidents a second, and it is growing at an alarming rate. If you think about it, that is 2x what it was just a year ago. And so you have to collaborate. You have to collaborate with your suppliers. We regularly debate this topic at our board's audit committee. And then you have to partner with governments as well. I mean, we're actively involved. Our cyber experts are actively involved with the folks at Homeland Security and the State Department, because these are sometimes domestic threats and they're sometimes foreign.
Another thing, I just piggyback on that. It also puts pressure on the capabilities of the vendor from a financial standpoint. We have a whole vendor approval process because, again, if you have a key vendor that you're really counting on and they don't have the financial wherewithal, that's an important issue as well. So that's another thing you're like, whoa, I didn't think about that. But that vendor management is pretty key.
Jim, let me ask you, what are some of the challenges when you're trying to implement some new technology to interface with your customers? And how do you know that if you've been successful? What are some of the judgment marks you say, all right, yeah, this is working, or you know what, we shouldn't have gone down this path, this might not be it?
Yeah, so first of all, we love the fact that we get customers to come in every day to our space. And that's something, again, where, when we have a customer group come in, of course, we have people whose main job it is to host those customer groups, and a lot of people who are in front of those customer groups. But I try really hard to be on as many of those as I can. In fact, of all the executives, I'm number 2, I'm proud to say right now, in terms of the number of those I do. And sometimes it's senior leaders from our customers that are there, and that's always a great conversation. But I get just as much, if not more, out of talking to the people on the front lines and understanding their work and their life and the choices they're trying to make and the challenges they're facing and the gaps they see in the products that are available to them. And then we often will show people prototypes of things we're working on. So in addition to things that are out there in the world, a little bit around failure, we're big believers in failure. We have partially working prototypes all over our building, including my office. I'm constantly working with new things that are in our innovation area, and we get all the IP approved and everything, but I love taking customers through them and showing them something that works most of the time and seeing what they think. You can tell the difference in a minute between an idea that is kind of, oh, that's interesting, versus, wow, wait, what was that? And for me, that's more validating than all the market research we could do, like seeing it in the eyes of a customer at that moment. I'll give you one other little story about this. So this is a story I love. There's 2 guys at Steelcase. I haven't told this story before. There's this guy named Matt, and Matt is a kind of a tinkerer, an inventor. He's in the IT department, but we know it's just his nature to invent things. And so we give him money and a little time, and he is always coming up with some new idea. And I know Matt, so I can kind of hang around and see some of the things he's doing. And there's another guy, Jeff, and Jeff's one of these guys who's in front of customers all the time. So every customer group comes in, we have a team of people that serves them. He's in front of customers every day, and that's his job. Really, these people have nothing to do with each other. They're in 2 very different parts of the company, but they happen to know each other and they're friends, and so they talk a lot. And one day, Matt was playing around with an idea, and Jeff saw it, and Jeff had a customer coming in, and Jeff asked if he would mind if Matt showed him, the customer, this idea. And they said, let's just try this, let's see what happens. And then they tried it again, and they tried it again. And after about 10 of these, Jeff came to me and he goes, this is a huge idea over here. Again, it's not his job to do that. He's not in marketing, he's not in market research, he doesn't have decision-making authority. But because the 2 of them are prototyping, because they have built a relationship with each other, and happily we have a culture where people try new things, that turned out to be one of the biggest ideas we had all year. And it was completely accidental. It's only because of these relationships and because of the culture. So sometimes the best idea isn't the one that you think is going to be the best idea. It's the one that when you put it in front of a customer, they go, I've never seen anything like that before.
We only have a few minutes left here, gentlemen, so I'm going to ask you to either shake your magic 8-ball or look into your crystal ball, or however you want to look into the future a little bit. And I'm going to ask each of you, and I'm going to start with you, Howard. What is the biggest challenge you think for your company on the horizon in terms of using technology and implementing it in the next couple of years?
It really is staying relevant with our customers and utilizing that technology, not for the technology's sake, but as Patrick shared at the beginning, how do you use your technology capability to drive customer satisfaction, get a higher share of their wallet, and ultimately so that can translate into higher shareholder value as well. I mean, that is that constant tension. I mean, it's not free, it costs money, you have to make those investments, you have to make those risky bets, but ultimately you have to get rewarded for that technology.
Rick, what would you say is going to be the biggest challenges going forward for your company?
I think it's probably fintech companies that, at the smaller end are maybe somewhat disintermediating banks completely. But with that said, so what we've decided to do is maybe embrace that and actually invest in some of these companies and learn a thing or 2. With that said, the mischief is associated with something that people like Patrick don't have to put up with, which is like anti-money laundering. Well, he actually does have to put up with anti-money laundering, but the different regulatory. It sounds great to go client to client, I make you a loan, get rid of the bank, we disseminate, but there's a regulatory side to that. There's know your customer regulations that are kind of nasty if you don't follow them. So how do you meld the technology with the regulatory environment and make that work? But clearly at the lower end of banking and the velocity of change in retail banking, that's probably the things that keep us up.
All right, Jim, I'm going to give you the last word on this, the challenges on the horizon.
I love the way the conference started, so I thought Patrick introduced it well, and the startup guys said it. Those ideas are out there. There's 100 ideas in all of our companies right now. it comes down to leadership. How do we as leaders engage to uncover those ideas, discover them, and make way in an organization that's designed to be perfect? How do we make way for ideas that are half-baked so they have a chance? I'm looking inside myself and trying to think, how can I lead differently to help those ideas find their way to the market?
All right. Well, thank you so much. How about a round of applause for our panel? Rick DeVore, Jim Keane, Howard Ungerleider. Thanks so much for your attention. Have a great morning.